Do you ever feel like life is a bit confusing and words can't explain everything, but you still keep going, writing, and doing your thing? Just like a small amount of what can make us sick actually keeps us healthy. Exploring deep books and art can help us understand the complicated parts of life. It makes us stronger and adds depth to our journey. Now think about this. The Book of Disquiet was never really finished, just like life can feel unfinished sometimes. It's like Pessoa's way of looking at life, a box of secrets revealed only after he was no longer here. The book's unplanned and changing nature is not like life itself. Isn't that interesting? So here we are, exploring Pessoa's timeless wisdom, wondering if it's on purpose, by chance, or something else entirely. Think about how sometimes stories about art are as interesting as the art itself. Sometimes where a great piece of art comes from is just as important as the art itself. The story of Fernando Pessoa, a famous writer from the 1900s, and his most important work, The Book of Disquiet, is one of those stories that almost seems like a made-up tale, but it's actually real. Fernando Pessoa was born in 1888 in Lisbon, Portugal. When he was just 5 years old, he experienced something very sad. First, his dad got very sick and passed away from tuberculosis. Then, less than a year later, his little brother also died. His mom got married again and they all moved to South Africa. This place became really important to Fernando. He learned English and fell in love with English books. When he was 17, he came back to Lisbon all by himself. He spent the rest of his life writing. But when Fernando Pessoa passed away in 1935 at only 47 years old, most people didn't know about his writing. He had only published a few things and nobody really knew who he was. But he felt deep down that he was meant to be a famous writer even after he died. After he passed away, his treasure of writing, including the Book of Disquiet and thousands of other pages, was put away in a simple wooden box, hidden from the world. It wasn't until 1982, exactly 47 years later, which is how old he was when he died, that they found the Book of Disquiet and showed it to the world. This book became really famous and important, and it's now considered as one of the most special and influential books from the 1900s. In this book, you'll find a lot of what Pessoa thought. It's a deep journey through different things like real life and dreams, ordinary stuff, who you are, the strange part of life, and how sometimes what we do doesn't make much difference. This book talks about the balance between the hard and simple parts of life. It likes things that seem opposite. This special book is made up of short pieces that are a bit like parts of a diary and poems mixed together. It doesn't tell a story in order. You can read it starting at the end or the beginning. It still works. What's even more interesting is that Pessoa doesn't say he wrote it. He says a guy named Bernardo Soares, who works with numbers in Lisbon, Portugal, and maybe another person, Vicente Guedes, did it. But those two people aren't real. Pessoa made them up to create this amazing book. In this long book, you'll see a lot of fake names and made-up writers for different parts and collections. These aren't just names, they're like characters with their own ways of writing, personalities, ideas, and life stories. Pessoa called them heteronyms, and he had about 80 of these other selves during his life. So the Book of Disquiet isn't just a true story or a made-up one. It's somewhere in between. That's why people say it's the weirdest autobiography ever written. Pessoa himself called it a life story without real facts, or the story of someone who never really lived. The way this book is written is special, and it's very important because it reflects the main ideas in the book. Pessoa uses different characters who are like authors to show a big idea in the book. It's about how we don't really know ourselves very well. In a way that feels really true and easy to understand, Pessoa talks about feeling alone, confused, and lonely, things we all feel sometimes. He wrote, "I don't know how to feel, think, or love. It's like I'm a character in a story that hasn't been written yet. Sort of in a space between disappearing before even really began. My mind is always spinning, but my feelings don't feel real. It's like I'm falling into a never-ending hole, without any direction or meaning. My soul is like a wild storm, like madness in an empty space. It's like an ocean going around an empty space, carrying pieces of everything I've ever seen or heard, houses, faces, music, and voices, all trapped in a dark, endless world." In Pessoa's world, it's a fascinating journey of self-discovery. He imagines himself as the center of everything, like a powerful magnet pulling everything towards him. He's the key to this big cosmic dance. But understanding himself, according to Pessoa, is like falling freely into a deep hole, and it seems like it might never end. Trying to figure out who he is during this fall brings a lifetime of confusion and feeling lost. It's a journey that's both amazing and confusing at the same time. In his writing, Pessoa also talks about things like life feeling dull and without much point, and how it's tricky to find the real meaning of life. To him, it's like life is a mirage, a series of dreams. He says, "I've done nothing but dream," recognizing that dreaming has been the most important part of his life. He's mostly focused on his inner thoughts. In Pessoa's world, the things we usually chase after and the stuff we achieve don't mean much. The world we lived in is like an illusion, just like dreams don't disappear when we wake up. Here one moment and gone the next. This is a deep way of looking at life that questions the usual ideas about what we're here and for what's important. In Pessoa's world, it's a fascinating journey of self-discovery. He imagines himself as the center of everything, like a powerful magnet pulling everything towards him. He's the key to this big cosmic dance. But understanding himself, according to Pessoa, is like falling freely into a deep hole, and it seems like it might never end. Trying to figure out who he is during this fall brings a lifetime of confusion and feeling lost. It's a journey that's both amazing and confusing at the same time. Life is like a dream that disappears when we wake up, like a picture made with a misty stuff of thoughts that we often forget. As Pessoa once said, "I write to calm strong feelings. What I admit might seem not important, because when you look at the whole big picture, everything can seem not very important." In these words, we think about how life can sometimes seem pointless, and it can make us want to escape into dreams. This reminds us of how things can be confusing and strange. Why think about how life doesn't always make sense and that words can't explain everything, yet still keep writing and doing things? It's not necessarily a sign of being mixed up, but maybe it's a way of seeing that there's something special in things that don't always fit together perfectly. Think about this. In medicine, we sometimes use a tiny bit of the same thing that makes us sick to help us stay healthy. Likewise, when we explore deep and meaningful books and art, it helps us understand the complicated parts of life and makes us stronger. Oddly enough, Pessoa's desire to create comes from realizing that even if it seems like there's no point, making things, writing and doing stuff can all be an important journey on its own. Now let's look at a fascinating aspect of the Book of Disquiet. This work was never finished, just like how life can sometimes feel incomplete. It's as if the book reflects Pessoa's unique view of existence. Think of it as a box of secrets that Pessoa's character left behind, only uncovered after Pessoa was gone. The book is a mix of thoughts from this character, not neatly planned, but shaped by time. Interestingly, Pessoa's birth name means person in English. But here's the interesting part. In the book, there are parts that seem to predict its own future. Pessoa wrote, "Sometimes, I think that maybe in the future when I'm not here anymore, someone will read and appreciate what I wrote. They'll be like my family, the ones who really understand and appreciate me. But by then, I'll be long gone and I won't see it. I'll be understood only in memory when the love can't make up for the indifference I face in life. One day, they might realize that I, like no one else, did my natural duty to understand a piece of our time. And when that happens, they're right that in my time, I was misunderstood, and the people around me didn't appreciate my work. It's a sad part of my story, and the person who writes this will probably also not fully understand my literary counterpart, just like my contemporaries didn't understand me." You see, people usually only learn what's important to their great-grandparents. Life's lessons we can only teach to those who have already passed away. And here we are, right in the middle of Pessoa's wise ideas, thoughts he wrote down over 100 years ago. You might wonder, did a very smart person carefully plan this, or did it just happen by chance? Maybe it's a bit of both or something completely different. Either way, the Book of Disquiet is deeply connected to its artistic core. It gives off a kind of special, almost magical feeling, like an important book for people who don't believe in traditional things, a guide for those who ask lots of questions. Reading it can make you feel both really sad and comforted. But in the end, it's a strong reminder not to take life or ourselves too seriously, because sometimes the way to feel better is to accept the problems we face.